Okay, folks, good morning. I think we got a fair amount of people already joined us. So thank you everybody for joining us for another Builder Forum series. My name is Kevin Ramloo, manager of the Green Buildings team. We're joined today with Jean Surrendran, our building energy specialist, Amy Drysdale, our technical assistant, and we have a special guest for you today, Shauna Vandenberg, one of our senior clerks. Today's topic is on the Zero Carbon Step Code, and we're calling today's course Zero Carbon Step Code 101. A little bit more than the basics. I want to bring you up to speed so you can help meet our requirements and requirements across the province. So we're today's brought to you by the Green Buildings Department and E3 Eco Group. And I'll discuss our consultant, Emma Conway, just a little bit later. So on the menu today, is an update from the Township of Langley. We'll give you a little bit of policy context to the Zero Carbon Step Code and some interesting facts you'll want to know that's going to help prepare you for adoption across the province. We'll also have a talk on our brand new, very exciting product, Green Buildings on.
Kevin, you're muted.
Did you hear anything? Any of that?
Yes, like it's just like 30 seconds, so it's fine.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That's strange. Okay, so on our agenda, we'll be talking about a little bit of policy context around Zero Carbon Step Code adoption around the province. We'll have Shauna Vandenberg talk about one of our brand new products, an online building permit application system. We'll talk about Green Buildings, one of our most exciting new tools, Green Buildings on Demand. We'll then wrap up the day with some upcoming events across the province to help you learn more about Zero Carbon Step Code and beyond. Our primary consultant today is Emma Conway of E3 Eco Group, and she's going to lead us through Zero Carbon Step Code 101. And please stick around. Once Emma's done, we're going to have an opportunity for all of you to ask questions and us to provide answers. And I want to take a quick second to highlight for all of you on computers or phones, Teams does have the ability for you to chat with the group. Please use the chat box, say hello, ask questions to your peers and colleagues across the province and to us. Use that opportunity. And if you do have an answer, if you're on the call, if you have an answer for one of your peers or colleagues, please type an answer in there as well. This is the Builder Forum series and is meant for to provide an opportunity for people simply to talk. Okay. Let me find. Okay, so I'd like to recap on our last event we had in February. And for those of you on the call and have access to the chat, please maybe type a little bit about your experience at our event if you were there. We had our first live event in roughly about 6 to 8 months at the Langley Event Center. It was a 2-day, very widely attended event. Our consultant for the 2-day event was Hamid Hyderali of Hamid Design Build, and it was all about exterior insulation. We learned all about the theory about exterior insulation on day 1, and in day 2, we had a full day of practical design where attendees got into groups from different companies and operating in different regions to practice what they learned so they could bring that home to their teams and start seeing how they can apply that in their design. What we learned over the 2 days is that exterior insulation, while it may be new for many, many builders and designers across the province, it can certainly be a very, very practical solution to help meeting energy and emission requirements across the province, and maybe something that's going to help you conduct your business. This was 8 hours of lecture over 2 days, and we're excited to say we're going to have our video up soon, probably within the next few weeks or so. keep an eye out in your inbox for our newsletters to see when we do launch it. It's going to be a 4-credit course for all of you. So if you did not get a chance to see that, please take a look in your inbox for an update. So some context to today's workshop. So today's workshop's all in zero carbon step code, but really where did that come from? And that's something I want to highlight to you. At the municipal level, we take direction from the province, and the province takes direction, of course, from the federal government. And we are given signals from the federal government through the National Building Code. So the National Building Code and the federal government releases work plans every 5 years or so, and they give us a hint of what's coming up. In the National Building Code, or otherwise NBC, work plan for 2025, they highlight, and 2030, they highlight some of their major priorities. One of the priorities is energy and carbon emissions. Now, this is for Canada-wide. Now, one good thing here in BC is energy and carbon, British Columbia is ahead of the game through step code and zero carbon step code. We can kind of put a tick on that box. We are already working on that, and we've already made quite a bit of progress. Moving on, climate change adaptation is now a major priority for the federal government, and that also includes overheating through finding solutions through designing around future climate data. And what this means is the federal government and then through provincial and through municipal governments will acknowledge that our climate is warming and we need to build our homes today to be able to be comfortable and safe in the future. Further, alterations to existing buildings. So if any of you work in any kind of retrofit or renovation or alteration scope, energy requirements are coming from the federal government, and they've been calling this the alterations to existing buildings code for a very long time. We anticipate it coming soon, but also, in a little bit of a hint to everybody in the room, since 2018 revision 5 of the BC Building Code, which was released May 1st of last year, there in fact are energy requirements for alterations in buildings, including Part 9 homes. So please acknowledge that. If you wish to ask questions, you're always welcome to email greenbuildings@tol.ca. As well, and this is not a comprehensive list, but policy work is also being done around adaptation to acknowledge all of the weather events that's going to be coming with climate change, including wildfires or flooding. The federal government is looking at that. So this is a bit of a kind of a look into the future of what's going to be coming down to the province, and then as you operate in municipalities across Metro Vancouver and beyond. I want to highlight on the right here, this is something we should all be very aware of, and the Township of Langley Greenbuildings likes to really highlight this to you. It is a new section, or a new component of a section of Part 9 of the BC Building Code that's been active since March 8th of this year of BC 2024, and that is for 933.3 design temperature. 933.3.1 or 933.3.2 now includes, and that's why it's in green here, it's a new section that we all need to be aware of. It is the inclusion of, for the first time, mandatory cooling in Part 9 buildings, Part 9 homes buildings. So what this tells us is, at outside summer design temperature, required cooling facilities shall be capable of maintaining an indoor air temperature of not more than 26 degrees and at least one living space in each dwelling unit. So what this means for you, if you build homes in the Township of Langley and beyond, you will need to demonstrate that one space in that dwelling unit or that home will not exceed 26 degrees in the peak of summer. There's many ways to achieve that, but it's really important that that is your obligation at building permit to be able to demonstrate that you can do that. One really easy way to blanket meet that is to include central cooling. So you've met cooling one space and the whole house for that matter. But this is something that we want to be very aware of. So I'm sure all of you know, and for a reminder, those who haven't been attending our workshops, as of April 1st this year, we require for Part 9 buildings, Step 4 of the BC Energy Step Code and EL2, emissions level 2 or limit 2 of the zero carbon step code for all BPs. So this is a map just of roughly Metro Vancouver of where we are with step code requirements. You'll see north of the river and a bit westward, we see a lot of folks requiring step 5. Right there, smack dab in the middle, that blue 4, that's the Township of Langley. So we're seeing a number of folks requiring step 5 here. We are at step 4, and the rest of this map are municipalities that were following the provincial timelines for step code adoption. What I really want to highlight is that, and as a reminder, step code's been available since 2019. Consultation really began in 2017. So about 5 years in, this is kind of overarching the map of adoption of BC Energy Step Code. I want to highlight the current map, roughly current map of zero carbon step code requirements across the province. It actually looks quite similar. Westward and north of the river, we see a lot of EL3, and there's four levels to the zero carbon step code. We see some EL3 and EL4 requirements, very similar to our step code requirements. And smack dab in the middle, the Township of Langley, as noted, is requiring EL2. So something really important to acknowledge when we compare these two maps. What we've seen in this map, a lot of the adoption is around EL3 or 4. In fact, we're seeing a lot of EL4 requirements across the province that's actually roughly equaling the amount of BC Energy Step Code level 5 requirements. Really important, and this is something we need to think about. The zero carbon step code, in contrast to the step code, is only 1 year old. However, we're seeing a very quick adoption. So this is something you want to take back to your teams and to really acknowledge that my guess, if I had a crystal ball, I'd probably think or see that I would expect a lot more zero carbon step code adoption at other municipalities coming soon. So as a reminder, please look at our building bylaw. It has been updated in section 7.5 under energy step code as of April 1st. 24 for part 9 group C, or that's residential occupancies, we require step 4 plus EL2. 1 year from that date, April 1st, 2025, the same building type, step 4 plus EL3. And as a reminder for those in the room that build part 3 buildings, we require for group C, that's residential, part 3 buildings to meet step 3. And we've been requiring that since 2022. I want to highlight a little bit about the Builder Forum series and publicly online launch a very exciting product. So with the Builder Forum series, we survey after every single event. The survey is a way for us to understand, when are we meeting the mark? Are we going a little bit too slow for you? Is this old news? Or also what you want to learn and how we can improve. I want to share some important data with you. We want to know why people come to these events. I can't see here, but I want to say at least 150 so people are here today. We've seen upwards of 250 people at our events. So we want to know, why do you come? The number one answer when we survey why do people come, they tell us that the topic's useful or interesting. And that makes sense. It probably helps them, helps you build homes across the province. The second highest answer, and it makes perfect sense, is to earn CPDs or continuing professional development hours, which for many of you are required to continue operating. And the last out of a large list of items is our reputation. We have a strong reputation for delivering education. That map you see in the right, is actually a map of, interestingly, building officials attending our event across the province. We have building officials attending from Tofino, Salmon Arm, and even as far east as the regional district of Central Kootenay. And when we look at a map of attendance for folks like you, builders and designers, we actually go all the way as far east as Toronto. So Green Buildings and the Builder Forum series is nationally recognized as an education provider. So that all being said, we want to improve this product to you, and we thought, you know, it's a fair amount of effort to put on these events, and we have to plan it far in advance, and we have to plan a date and an exact time. It's 9 o'clock on a certain day, and we can get a fair amount of people. However, what if you're busy? These matters, and we find people miss out on these events. They miss out on the education. They also miss out on the credits. So we asked ourselves a series of questions. In order to reach more people, can we still provide quality training, interesting training, useful training, and also provide continuing professional development hours to attendees? That's what we do now. We provide you training, get you credits, and however, on top of that, accommodate anyone's schedule. Currently, the only way to get a credit from most 99% of training across the province is to attend live. This is how we know you're here, of course, and how you learned. But can we provide all three of these items? Get you the credit, get you the training, and accommodate anyone's schedule? Yes, we can. After well over 3 years of work, we are publicly online launching our Green Buildings on-demand product. This product is available anytime, anywhere, on your cell phone, on your computer, on your tablet, whatever, is fully accredited. What this means is we have a learning portal that you can watch on your cell phone or your computer. You can watch all of our lectures, all of our workshops, including this one that's recorded today, for those who are not able to attend today, and still earn your CPDs. We are accredited by BC Housing, Building Officials Association of BC, Architects Institute of BC, and more. And really importantly, it's completely free. Just like today's lecture, but as well, all of our online courses are available there for you to watch, get your credit anytime you want, and it's free. Learn and earn anytime you like. Check out tol.ca, that's us, tol.ca, Township of Langley.ca/GBLearn. That's Green Buildings Learn for links and all those matters. And I've introduced a topic for you today, or our brand new product. Shauna Vandenberg, our senior clerk, is going to walk us through another exciting product that the Township of Langley offers to our building community to help you apply for building permits even easier. Shauna, can you share your screen?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. The Township of Langley is continually working towards adding digital online building permit applications. A number of applications can now be applied for online, and they're located under the Township of Langley website. You can find that under Building and Development, Building, and Building Permit Applications and Guides. Under this format, you can also decide which type of application you want to apply for. So if you're applying for residential, for example, the residential applications, you will see an Apply Online button under any of the applications that are available to apply online. We do have secondary suites, basement finish, demolition permits, a number of different types in here. Today, I'm going to be demonstrating a secondary suite application. In order to apply, you do need to have a My Township account. So in our website, you can click on the My Township from the top of the page, and it will give you a link here to sign up or sign into your My Township account. Okay. The other option is when you're applying, again, I'll just go through. So for any of you, if you're applying for a residential application and you wanted to apply for a secondary suite and you want to apply online, we'll just click. It brings you into the secondary suite apply online application. Okay, if you have a My Township account, it will automatically link you in here. Okay, I'm just going to go into a test application. I just need to move this out of the way. Okay, excuse me while I go into my test application. All right. So if you're applying online, you press continue. Now, if everyone could into the chat, because you need a My Township account, if you could let us know if you have a My Township account in there, that would be great. You come in and you enter in a address, whatever it is. I'm just going to pick something for the project that you are going to apply for. You click on the address once it comes up. And the applicant information will automatically populate from your My Township account. Okay, so this is your applicant. Once it's populated, you can press continue. Now you'll add the builder information to your account. Okay, in this case, if you're using it on a regular basis, it's going to populate. If not, you will type in all that information, okay, and you enter in the name of the builder. If the builder also has a company name, you're going to enter in the company information, and you're going to press continue. Then it's going to come into a email contact. So building inspection notices are emailed out when the builder comes on site to do an inspection. So you would enter who is going to be receiving these emails. I'm just going to use myself. And it will populate if you have information that you can grab from your account if you're regularly using it. Anything with a star is a mandatory field, so you'll have to enter that information. Press continue. It's a fairly easy process here. In order to link a permit to your My Township account and call for inspections, you're going to need an access code. So I'm just going to an access code, 4 to 6 digits. So in this case, I'm just going to enter in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you enter in the description of the proposed construction. So in this case, we're going to say sign permit application. I'm not going to put any further details. Sign permit application and continue. Then you're going to upload documents that you want. These are they're listed all here, and anything that has a star again is a mandatory item. So we're going to add in an application form, and there will be a checklist. These documents are all located same place that you found your apply online, but they'll be under the forms for the application form and the checklist. And it's asking for a site plan, so you would add your site plan if you needed that. And I'm just going to put, because I see that this is my test version here. And you're going to Okay, and we're going to press continue. Then it comes to a confirmation screen where you can make sure that the property is correct, the applicant information is correct, the builder information is correct. This is who you want your inspection notices to go to. Yep, that's my access code for this permit. And these are the documents I've uploaded. And now it wants you to acknowledge all your information. So we're going to click the acknowledgements, read them. Each permit type might be a little bit different, and continue. And you're going to get an application has been created. Okay, now, for some reason, I did not get my link. At this point, if you had an application where you're going to be uploading to our website, you will also get a link here, and the link will take you into another screen where you can upload your other drawings. Okay, and that is pretty much as simple as that is. What I am going to tell you is on the, just bear with me for a second. I'm just going to go into our main screen. Where some of our information is located. So under here, so if you are applying for an application and you need to know how to upload information, we do have a plan review portal upload guide. And it does show you exactly what is going to happen on your screen. So upload your drawings, you would click on this and it'll come into another screen. And you're going to upload your drawings. You're going to search for your drawings, upload them, choose what type of a drawing is it architectural, is it structural? And then you're going to upload them. It's going to give you a little a warning, just letting you know that we need to know that we are going to repurpose the drawings. We're going to mark them up. You're going to click on the upload. It's going to say success. On the left-hand side, you're going to submit for review, and your drawings will be uploaded. If at any time you do not receive this button, like I just did on mine, or there's a problem, you can go directly into your My Township account, and you can go through the same process. Choose the permit. There's a plan review portal button. You click on the button, and from there you'll follow the same steps we just did here. All right. Kevin, back to you. And I will just find my screen so I can give you back.
Thanks, Shauna. That's awesome. And maybe all y'all in the chat, maybe you can just let us know if you've been using our online BP application. Okay, I think we're back. Okay, so thanks so much, Shauna, for walking us through our brand new e-apply system. I think that's going to be an awesome tool for many folks on the call today. I'd like to pass it off to Amy Drysdale, our technical assistant. Now, I briefly mentioned our brand new, really exciting product, Green Buildings on Demand. We did a soft launch about two months ago to a group of people at one of our live events to kind of see how people are using it, to work out some bugs. And also, as noted, we love to collect data and information because it helps us understand you better so we can prepare better products. Amy is going to summarize some interesting data for you, and maybe even kind of walk us through how to find our Green Buildings on Demand webpage. So Amy, off to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm very excited to share this product with everyone. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so I'm going to go quickly through our on-demand learning portal. We currently have 6 courses available for up to 7 CPD credits. The link is right here. We're going to go to, if you want to walk through it with me, we're going to go to tol.ca/gblearn. And if you don't want to do this right now, we're going to post the link in the chat at the end, along with sending out an email at the end, a follow-up email with the link. Okay, so I'm going to, can you see this? If I change my, great.
Yep, you can see it.
So we're going to go to tol.ca/gblearn for Green Buildings Learn. And that's going to bring us to this page. And we're going to click on the first big blue button that we see, which is right here, the Builder Forum Series On-Demand Learning Portal. And that's going to bring us right to where we want to be. You can see we currently have 6 courses. This is the test course I'm going to be walking you through. This is not eligible for any CPDs. And what are people saying about the Builder Forum series? That is all of our testimonial footage from our previous events, if you want to know what people have been saying about our Builder Forum series. So we're going to open the test course. And unfortunately, I need to sign out first. We're going to open the test course. Here, you're going to see the eligible credits for most of our courses are eligible for BC Housing, AIBC, BOA BC, and KC credits. And here you can find all of the information on the specific course. And to enroll in the course, you're going to click on the big Enroll for Free button. That should be right at the top of the screen. And that'll bring you to a sign-in page if you aren't already signed in. So I'm going to quickly make an account. And that'll bring you directly into the video. And right here, you can see that we've got our Net Zero Energy Ready testimonials video. The audio probably isn't working, but that's okay. If you want to watch our testimonials, you can go back and watch our What Are People Saying About the Builder Forum series video. And then once we're finished with this, we're going to hit Complete and Continue. And we're going to get our certificate. Once you have the certificate, if you are going for credits for BC Housing, BOA BC, or KC, you will need to self-report your certificate. But if you're going for AIBC, there's a different process, and you just need to have completed the course, see that you have the certificate, and we will have a AIBC survey where you have to let us know that you want AIBC credits. I'm now going to go back to my presentation, and I want to share all of our courses have quizzes on them, and we've gathered some pretty interesting data from what people think about electric systems versus natural gas systems. One of our questions in our quiz was, what heating type is the most expensive to operate? So not what is the most expensive to install, what is the most expensive for the homeowner to operate and heat their home with? 36% of respondents thought that a heat pump would be the most expensive to operate. 27% thought natural gas, and 36% also thought electric resistance. If you don't know, a heat pump is generally 2 to 3 times more efficient than electric resistant or electric baseboard heat. So it's very interesting that equal amounts of people thought a heat pump would be the most expensive as people who thought that electric baseboards would be the most expensive. These are the results from the township's home heating and cooling survey results. It was a survey sent out by our sustainability department, and the results released in December. There's over 300 survey respondents, I believe, and it asked people what kind of heating and cooling system do you have, and asked them various questions about it, such as one of the examples was, how do you feel your heating bill is good or excellent? 65% of heat pump owners believe that their heating bill is good or excellent. 30% of natural gas furnace owners, and about an equal amount of people who had natural gas, a boiler, radiant heat, and electric baseboards thought that their heating bill was good or excellent, which is interesting because this is very different from what builders thought would be the most expensive to operate and what people would be satisfied with. Another interesting thing was participants were asked to rate their own systems on their greenhouse gas emissions, and only 9% of natural gas furnace owners thought that their systems had poor greenhouse gas emissions. That means less than 10% of people using natural gas think that their systems are an emission problem. That they cause emissions, essentially. Whereas 12% of people who had electric heating systems thought that their systems had poor greenhouse gas emissions. So the people who had electric systems, more people who had electric systems thought their emissions were worse than those with natural gas systems. And if you want to, back to Green Buildings on Demand, if you want to hear about any new courses that are coming out, for example, if you weren't able to attend our Builder Forum series in February, we will send out a newsletter once that course is available on our on-demand training. So if you'd like to sign up for a newsletter, go to tol.ca/enews and select Green Buildings for Builders and Industry. Enter in your email, and that'll be that. And we will send out instructions at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amy. Right. So, and please do, depending on how you found us today, we market our events through a variety of means. The best way to keep in touch with us and up to date on all of our education events or other important information is through our newsletter. We used to send direct emails, probably from Green Buildings or even from Kevin or Jean or Amy. However, we consolidated our marketing and information portal through our newsletter. So if you're not on our newsletter, you will be missing out on important events just like these ones we're holding today. So please find yourself to e-news and register as soon as you can. So thanks so much, Amy. That's great. On the matter of our Green Buildings On Demand portal, we still have more courses that we're polishing up, just like our event in February, Hamid Hardarali's event. We're going to be posting that on our On Demand portal shortly. We'll let you know through our newsletter. But if you're still not convinced, I want to show you a quick video about our education events. And this was from our last live event prior to Hamid's event in summer of last year, a series of awesome workshops held at the Township of Langley's first Net Zero Energy Ready Step 5 EL4 compliant townhouse building here in the township. And we'll see what some of our attendees thought about this type of event. Well, let's see if I can get this right. Oh. And Jean, I want to put sound, right? Share audio. Okay.
I do look to Langley as a resource for builder education. Step 5 buildings are a big change from what we're doing right now. I haven't been to a workshop like this before, but it was really good to be on site and see the construction process firsthand and to be able to ask questions about things that you can't see behind layers of plywood or membranes. That's a more educational process.
We found at the Step 5 workshops that our attendees were asking more sophisticated and highly technical questions. This tells us our industries are eager to move forward and that they look to the township for that extra bit of knowledge to help them make step code and low carbon construction work for them.
After attending these workshops, I'm pretty sure we can do the step code 5 house with the EL4, with the traditional construction materials and traditional methods to build a house.
I can talk to 10 different builders and tell them about these technologies, but to practically see and say that, look, there was a session like this and it will be available online, it makes my job a lot easier.
Although the targets are pretty high, I can see only BCIT and Township of Langley recently that doing all these trainings related to these subjects. You guys are really demonstrating what is happening, and I really want you guys to just keep continuing for these workshops. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a bit of a testimonials video from our Net Zero Energy Ready workshops. If you weren't able to be there, please join our Green Buildings on Demand portal, and you'll be able to see a few lectures that we have recorded. You can watch them. You can get the credit, and as well, we have a very large population of building officials on our call today. One of our events was specifically meant to educate around the permitting process for these types of buildings, where we'll learn compliance information and even offer some interesting tools to help you process these types of buildings efficiently and quickly. Okay, we're ready to start with our main event with Emma, but right before we get to Emma, I want to just say a quick word about our technical assistant, Amy Drysdale. I want to, with everybody here, thank Amy for her time with us. Amy is, if you didn't know, she's our co-op student from Simon Fraser University. She is still pursuing her undergraduate degree, and I want to highlight some of her achievements with us over the last 8 months. Amy came on with a laundry list of items that we really wanted to move forward and that we simply couldn't. And I'm really, I couldn't be more thrilled to say that Amy helped us bring our Green Buildings on Demand portal to life. This is something that's been, we've been chipping away at for well over 3 years, and we simply didn't have the horsepower to get this released to you, our building industry. So we all want to thank Amy for helping us get this really important product out to you. For those of you who could join us about 2 months ago at our event at the Langley Event Center, you'd see how well done it was, and that was primarily due to Amy's hard work. That was a 2-day event. We had over 300 tickets sold. We had breakfast. It was a large scale event, and Amy certainly carried the lion's share of that load. And she also provided an immense amount of administrative and technical support to our little tiny group of green buildings. So we thank you for that, Amy. We all collectively wish you the best, and those on the call, maybe you can join me in the chat wishing Amy the best with the rest of her education and career goals. So thank you, Amy. Okay, so with that, I'd like to introduce Emma Conway to bring us our lecture for today on Zero Carbon Step Code 101. Emma is an energy advisor and project manager for E3 Eco Group. She was one of the primary consultants for that Net Zero Energy Ready Step 5 EL4 compliant townhouse project in the Township of Langley. And as well, a very talented and competent envelope consultant as well. And as well, Emma has other recorded videos on our Green Buildings on-demand portal for you to check out and learn more. So with that, please join me in welcoming Emma to teach us all about the Zero Carbon Step Code.
Great, Kevin. Thank you so much for that introduction. Let me just get my screen set up here. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. My name is Emma Conway. I'm very pleased to be with you here today to discuss the Zero Carbon Step Code. My agenda for today, first of all, we're going to talk about why do we care about carbon? Why are we talking about it? Then I'm going to introduce the Zero Carbon Step Code and specifically go through some different compliance options, looking at the prescriptive and the performance pathways. And finally, I've put together some case studies for you with some different building archetypes so that we can try to get an idea of how we can comply with the different levels, specifically emissions level 2 and 3. So why do we care about carbon? Why are we here today? Well, it's important to understand that the burning of fossil fuels for our space heating and our domestic hot water contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. Provincially, in total, 12% of BC's overall greenhouse gas emissions is from buildings. And it is important to note that depending on where you are, what type of energy grid you have access to, what type of fossil fuels you're using, whether it's natural gas, propane, or possibly even oil in some parts of the province, your emissions might be more intense. So looking at a few examples here, City of Kamloops, 29% of their total greenhouse gas emissions comes from their buildings, compared to 38% in Prince George, and 57% in the City of Vancouver. In the Township of Langley, in a 2017 building emissions report, it was determined that about 30% of the municipalities' greenhouse gas emissions came from buildings. And looking closely to the different types of buildings, it's very important to note that 50% of that was coming specifically from residential buildings. So that's the biggest piece of the pie compared to 32% for commercial, 13% for industrial, and 5% institutional. Within our buildings, it's very important to understand that if you're heating your home fully on natural gas for your space heating and your domestic hot water, that's basically 98% of your emissions are coming from your space and your domestic hot water heating, while only close to 1% is coming from your cooking and your appliances. So it's really important to understand that natural gas, space and water heating equipment is really the big majority of your household carbon pollution. And on average in the province, about 4.9 carbon dioxide emissions per year per home. So that's your average home that's heated with natural gas, space and domestic hot water heating. So that's quite a bit. Comparatively, if you're heating your home fully on electricity here in BC, the emissions are quite significant compared to heating it with natural gas. So basically, if you were to switch your home from fully being on natural gas to fully being on electricity, that's 17 times less emissions. So it's really important to understand that here in BC, obviously hydro is the cleanest form of electricity. The grid in BC is 98% clean electricity. So here in BC, we're really lucky to have that. And this is really why the Zero Carbon Step Code is pushing us towards choosing electricity as a zero carbon option. So fossil fuel equipment that we typically see in homes, yes, natural gas is the most prevalent here in Langley. There is also propane and oil that are used in other parts of the province. But typically, we're looking at our gas furnace, our gas boiler, maybe a gas tankless or tank, and then gas stove or cooktop. What we're transitioning towards with the Zero Carbon Step Code is equipment that uses electricity. So electric hot water heat pumps, domestic hot water heat pumps, and electric water heaters, and even now induction stoves are becoming a lot more popular. So really what we're looking for is a transition towards zero carbon electrically heated equipment, which is why the province has introduced, as of May of last year, the Zero Carbon Step Code. So this is what we're here to talk about today, and there's 3 important things to note about the Zero Carbon Step Code. It is technically separate from the BC Energy Step Code. It's in addition to, and as of right now, different municipalities can opt in. So for example, Township of Langley has opted into the Zero Carbon Step Code. It's separate from the energy performance of the Step Code. The Zero Carbon Step Code cares about what type of fuel you're using. Second, it is only about operational emissions. There's a lot of education out there right now about embodied emissions, you know, the emissions associated with different building materials. To be clear, Zero Carbon Step Code is only looking at operational emissions. And third, it's important to note that the Zero Carbon Step Code currently only applies to new construction. So where is this coming from? Why do we have these new regulations that the province have released? Well, Clean BC has set out a roadmap to 2030, and it has declared that by 2030, all new buildings need to be zero carbon, meaning operationally. So we need to move towards 2030. All new construction needs to be fully electric, essentially. What's happening nationally at a federal level? Well, the Canada Greens Building Strategy was released in 2022, and the direction that the federal government is setting is that ultimately in the building sector, we need net zero emissions and climate resilient buildings by 2050. So this is really important to understand that not only from the provincial level, but from the federal level, there is support for this. The top 3 items that were identified as strategies for the building sector is for new buildings to be net zero carbon and climate resilient. They want to increase the rate of deep energy retrofits that are happening across Canada. And ultimately, we know that the most emissions in buildings are coming from our space and hot water heating systems. Therefore, we need to decarbonize and electrify. So for those working in new construction, you know, that really means item 1 and 3 are going to apply to you. If you're also working in existing home retrofits, you know, that means that it's coming. It's not here yet, but the way the National Building Code is going in 2025, there will be, for the first time ever, an alterations code that cares about energy in renovations. So I understand that all of this is coming very fast, and this is ultimately where it's coming from the federal and provincial levels. Okay, so I want to give you a couple definitions, says there's a lot of things floating around in the industry right now, and it's easy to get things either confused or mixed up. So what is a zero carbon building? So according to the Canada Green Building Council that has put together a zero carbon building standard, it's a building that is highly energy efficient and is minimizing its greenhouse gas emissions from both the materials and operations perspective. So a zero carbon building is looking at embodied carbon and operational carbon. To be clear, the Zero Carbon Step Code at this point in time is only looking at operational carbon. So to be clear, the province is not saying we're building zero carbon buildings, is that we need to limit the operational carbon. Another term out there right now that is very popular is net zero buildings. And if you look at the wording in the BC Energy Step Code, it says we need to be net zero energy ready by 2032. So to be clear, there is a program out there by the Canadian Home Builders Association, whereas you can voluntarily adopt this standard and build either to net zero ready or net zero. And a net zero home is a home that produces as much clean energy annually as it consumes with renewable energy systems such as solar PV. So to be clear, when it says the province needs to be net zero energy ready by 2032, it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting this label. What it means is you've built an envelope that is efficient enough, airtight enough, and has reduced its energy consumption that if you added solar panels, you would get a 0 gigajoule EnerGuide rating. It doesn't necessarily mean you get this label. This is a voluntary standard that you can opt into that has additional requirements beyond just, the energy performance of the home. So just to be clear, the zero carbon step code cares about how much carbon you're using, whereas a net zero home cares about how much energy you're using. I believe that the future net zero standard will have a version that references carbon as well, but currently net zero homes only care about how much energy your home is using. Okay, so now let's talk about the difference between the BC Energy Step Code and the Zero Carbon Step Code. So the BC Energy Step Code is asking you how much energy is your building using. This is looking at using the EnerGuide rating system for Part 9 buildings, how much energy, i.e. gigajoules per year, is your home using. You can use, depending on what step code level you're trying to achieve, you can use whatever configuration of mechanical equipment you want, as long as you're hitting the required MUI and TEDI and air tightness. The zero carbon step code is asking what type of energy or fuel your building is using. So ultimately, this comes down to, are you using natural gas? Are you using propane? Are you using electricity? And what is the resulting greenhouse gas emissions from that? So yes, the zero carbon step code is asking, how much are you using? Because obviously how much energy you're using will impact your emissions, but ultimately it really is coming down to what type of fuel, natural gas or electricity, for the majority of homes. So the BC Energy Step Code, let's keep in mind this is currently provincially mandated at step 3, whereas the Zero Carbon Step Code is currently can be voluntarily adopted by different municipalities. So, and the main difference here that I really want to point out, BC Energy Step Code, I understand, has been a process that has had to been learned by a lot of builders. Depending on what step code level you're trying to achieve, it may be, a bit more complicated compared to, what we used to build 9.32. But I want to make it clear that these two items have synergies and go hand in hand. So compared to what you've had to learn for BC Energy Step Code, the Zero Carbon Step Code should be quite simple. If you're having to meet, step code level 4, for example, you're probably already using a heat pump to achieve that, likely. Therefore, if you're using a heat pump and you have cooling, now you're meeting the new cooling requirement that Kevin mentioned. And on top of it, you're using electricity and you're using a lot less energy because it's heat pump technology. So all of these things have synergy. And I think the good news for builders is the zero carbon step code, when paired with higher levels like step code level 4, should be quite easy for you to execute. So this is where we're going from the provincial level. We know that we need to be step 5 by 2032. Today, as of May of last year, all Part 9 buildings at minimum in the province need to be step 3. Some municipalities have gone ahead of that, step 5 or step 4 with a low carbon energy system. This is the terminology that you're going to hear depending on what municipality you're working in. And ultimately, what we're likely going to see, probably sooner rather than later, is more and more municipalities opting into the zero carbon step code, which came out May 1st of last year for the first time. So let's just go over a little bit of terminology. You hear emissions level, you hear, measure only. So for example, when I say emission level 1, that's basically the first step of the zero carbon step code. So similar to the energy step code with the different steps up or tiers, we have the same thing for the zero carbon step code. So measure only was an option that was put out by the province, basically to allow municipalities to collect data if they so wish. So there was no cap, there was nothing exactly that you had to meet. You at least have to be measuring it so that maybe a baseline could be set, or an understanding or awareness about how you're building or what level of emissions you're building for builders. Emission level 2 is called moderate carbon. Emission level 3, we also refer to as strong carbon. And then the top tier, emission level 4, is that zero carbon performance. And I'm going to go into more detail, the requirements of these different steps in a few slides. But first I want to highlight, what is the timeline for this? We know, thanks to the Clean BC roadmap, that we have to be, for new construction, zero carbon by 2030. Today, the province has released the zero carbon step code for different municipalities to opt into. And they've opted into different levels, as I will show you in a few upcoming slides. But provincially, we don't know exactly what the timeline is going to be for when it's going to be mandated province-wide. Is, next year when we're getting the final version of the 2024 BC Building Code, are they going to mandate emission level 1 or 2? Undecided at this point, we don't know. In 2027, in alignment with the Energy Code, is it going to be 2 or 3? Ultimately, we don't know. It has not yet been decided by the province. However, we do know that we need to be zero carbon performance by 2030. In the Township of Langley, we do have a bit more direction that's been provided. April 1st of this year, emission level 2 moderate carbon has come into effect. And we already know that by next April 2025, strong carbon is going to be in effect. So that's emission level 3. Zero carbon, we don't know. Ultimately, with the provincial timeline, we know at the latest we need to be there by 2030. Will it happen sooner in the Township of Langley? That is yet to be decided. And I wanted to put this slide in here just to highlight what different municipalities are doing across BC. So far, I'm aware of 29 local governments that have adopted a carbon limit. City of Vancouver is in there, although they have their own code, which is why I have the asterisks there. But you can see there are a number of local municipalities. We've got Burnaby, Township of Langley, City of New West, Richmond, if you're building locally here. And also you can notice a bit of a trend as well on Vancouver Island. A lot of Vancouver Island municipalities have jumped all the way up to emissions level 4, that zero carbon performance right now. So this is the list to start. I expect over the next year, this is going to be multiplying, and we're going to see more and more municipalities opting in. And perhaps some of our municipalities, North Van, West Van, Richmond, Burnaby, that are emission level 3 now, who knows? Maybe by next year they'll be at emission level 4. We don't know, but I think that all of this is going to be happening very quickly for you builders. So it's important to keep up to date with where you're building and understanding what level of emissions is required. And finally, I just want to highlight what Kevin was talking about with the most recent update of the BC Building Code, which came out on March 8th of this year, by the way. There was a number of things in there. There was some items on radon. There were some items on adaptability. But most importantly, there was an overheating and life safety requirement that came out. And where this was coming from, I'm sure most of you remember in 2021, we had the heat dome here in BC. And this is actually the deadliest weather event that's happened in Canada to date, with over 600 people losing their lives. The majority of these people weren't outside overheating, they were in their homes overheating. Their homes where they're supposed to be, their safest and where they spend most of their time. So really, this new requirement came out of that, critical event that happened in Canada. And ultimately, we've seen this, but the terminology that has been introduced into the BC Building Code is that at least one habitable room needs to be held to a temperature of not more than 26 degrees Celsius within the home. So to be clear, at the minimum, it's one room. How could we do that? Possibly, you know, a mini split head in one room of the house. And it has to be a habitable room. So like a living room, a rec room in the basement, primary bedroom. So at the minimum, there needs to be at least one space. But if you're already going to a whole home air source heat pump for heating and cooling, no problem. You already meet this. And again, I do want to highlight that when we're getting to the higher step code levels, step 4 and step 5, you know, likely you're probably going to be going to a heat pump to meet your MUI requirements anyways. So all of these have synergies, and it's really important to understand, you know, heat pump for MUI compliance, heat pump for cooling requirement, and now it's also going to help you for your zero carbon compliance. Okay, so now I'm going to be going through the different compliance options for Part 9 building, but before I do so, I do want to go over some very important terminology to understand when we're talking about different types of heating systems that you can select. So what is a principal heating system defined by the BC Building Code? This is a heating system that can be designed to accommodate the heating load of the building and may include supplementary heating equipment. So if you have a furnace that is sized to heat the entire heating load of your home, that is the primary heating system. If you had a heat pump that carried maybe 70% of the load and you had a supplementary furnace backing that up, that furnace is your supplementary that would be topping up that missing 30%. So that's the principal heating system. You know, my definition as an energy advisor is minimum 70% of the heating load is the principal heating system. I wanted to throw in here what a redundant backup system is. A redundant backup system is equipment that does not add to the heating load of the home. You know, it is something that, you know, it's separate from the primary system. It is not the supplementary system. It is just there as either a, you know, a redundant gas fireplace there for maybe enjoyment or decoration, or like a backup system like a generator. These types of redundant or backup systems do not need to be included in the energy calculations of the home. So again, if you have a wood burning stove, a gas fireplace, or an emergency generator, that is a redundant or backup system and is not included in our zero carbon step code calculations. Whereas a supplementary heating system, which I've already talked a little bit about, this is included in our energy and carbon calculations. So again, the supplementary heating system is there to help meet the principal heating load of the house. Okay, so this would be your air source heat pump with a supplementary gas furnace, or even if you had an air to water heat pump that was being supplemented by a gas boiler. In combination, these two things are working together to meet the full heating load of the house. So I think it's really important to understand when you are selecting your equipment, when you are talking to your energy advisor to do the modeling, and when you're talking to your HVAC who's going to be purchasing the equipment and setting it up, it is very important to understand the cutoff temperature. What is the cutoff temperature? It is also referred to as maybe a switchover temperature, but ultimately this is the minimum operating temperature for the primary heat pump system. So for example, your off-the-shelf heat pump will probably operate to about 0 degrees Celsius. That's the cutoff temperature. And then the supplementary system would be kicking in. So this specific cutoff temperature can be defined in HOT 2000. And there is a very big difference in the resulting energy consumption and therefore carbon reporting, depending on that temperature, cutoff temperature that is selected. And I think it's very important for everyone on this call to understand that whether you're setting that cutoff temperature to 5 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius, or -5 degrees Celsius can have very different results and can absolutely impact not only your step code performance, but also your zero carbon step code performance. So if you are, designing a system that has like maybe primary electric, like a heat pump with a supplementary gas furnace, I think it is very important that you're communicating to your energy modeler, stating what the specific cutoff temperature should be. And your energy advisor should absolutely be including that information in the pre-construction report, because that is what is shared with your HVAC installer. And the HVAC installer is the one that's programming the controls. So for example, if your energy advisor is stating maybe a -5 or a 0 degrees Celsius cutoff temperature, and your HVAC installer isn't aware of that and is setting it to 2 degrees or 5 degrees Celsius, now the home isn't performing as designed. So I think this is very important to understand, because this has very large implications, not only for our step code compliance, but also our zero carbon step code compliance. Wanted to quickly also talk about just sizing your heat pump. Right sizing your space heating and cooling equipment is critical for the equipment to operate at peak energy performance, as it's been designed to. We don't want to oversize our equipment. Ultimately, we don't want to undersize our primary system either, because then that would mean we'd be depending more on our supplementary more than expected. In the BC Building Code, we have CSA F280. This is basically our room-by-room heating and cooling load calculations. For new construction, you are required by code to be doing these calculations. So I really encourage you to make sure that you have either an energy advisor or you have a HVAC installer who is doing these calculations and is choosing your heat pump or furnace based on those numbers. If you properly size your equipment and program the controls with the proper cutoff temperature, a regular off-the-shelf heat pump should be able to cover majority of the heating load down to about 0 degrees Celsius in this climate zone. I'm talking about climate zone 4. What about if it gets colder than that, you ask? I am aware we had a cold snap here this year where we went down to, I think, -15 here in North Van, and I believe it was even -20 in other parts of the province. Well, if you are concerned about that, or your homeowner is concerned about that, there are cold climate air source heat pumps. My definition that I've heard recently is that this is a heat pump that can meet 90% of the heating capacity down to about -17 degrees Celsius. Some cold climate heat pumps work efficiently down to 25 degrees Celsius and maintaining a COP of 2 down to 17 degrees Celsius. So this is really important to understand. There are options on the market, these cold climate air source heat pumps that can provide, that performance that we want from our heat pump down to very cold temperatures. In a situation like this, supplementary electric heating would rarely be needed in our climate zone here, right? So if you're worried about the costs of what happens at cold temperatures, if you install a cold climate heat pump, we're probably very, very rarely going to be running it off of, straight electric supplementary heat. If you were installing a cold climate air source heat pump and paying the premium for that, there would be no need to install a supplementary gas furnace in this climate zone. It just wouldn't make sense. Because we're so mild here, why install 2 systems when you have one system that can operate very efficiently down to at least -17? So if this is something that maybe sounds like you're interested in, or something that sounds good for you, I would start talking to some of your suppliers and finding out what options they are and what the price is for that. Okay, now that we've gone through some of the different options and definitions, I'm going to be diving into the metrics. So I'm sure all of you love looking at the BC Building Code, but I'm going to try to break it down for you here. So on the left-hand side, we have the EL1, EL2, EL3. These are the emissions levels that you hear us talk about. We have the first category here, which is total greenhouse gas emissions emitted by your home. I refer to this quite commonly as total GHGs. This is the first performance option. But As you can see, there's an or here. Beyond just total GHG emissions, there is a second category of performance options that is both the greenhouse gas intensity, which is basically the total GHGs divided by the floor area of your home, and a maximum total GHG emissions. So in this category of performance metrics, you must meet both in order to be compliant. Or we have a third option, basically a prescriptive pathway. So the code was designed for builders to be flexible. We have performance option 1, which was primarily designed for the use of small homes. Out of the BC Energy Step Code, we know that smaller homes have a hard time complying with the performance metrics. That's why additional metrics were introduced over the years. So Zero Carbon Step Code has that built in from the beginning. Option 1, good for small homes. Performance option 2, this is probably going to be 80% of buildings that are built. It's going to be good for your average to large size homes, going to be good for your custom homes. So majority of projects are likely going to be using performance option 2. And then finally, there is a prescriptive option, which is going to be good for homes that are either fully electric because where they're being built, that's the only option. Or it could be good if you're already going fully electric and maybe there's, direction from the builder or from the homeowner that they don't even want any gas. I just want fully electric. Well, then great. The prescriptive options are going to be good for you for emissions level 4. So let's start with the prescriptive approach. If you read the code here, energy sources supplying heating systems have an emissions factor of less than 0.011. What does that even mean? Well, if you look up the emissions factor in the BC Building Code, basically the only option that meets that emission level is electricity. These emission levels are coming from the National Inventory Report on Greenhouse Gas Sources and Sinks in Canada. So this was developed from the standard. These are what has been introduced. This is out of the BC Building Code. And if you are using something that is not on this list, you would need to talk to the AHJ and get approval in advance. So one example could be if you're building in an area that has a district energy systems, what is the emission factor for that specific district energy system? There would need to be a conversation with the utility and with the AHJ, and they would come up with an emission factor for you to use. But probably majority of the items that you build with are on this list: electricity, natural gas, propane, being the most likely here in BC. And if you look at these emissions level factors, if you take electricity, times it by 17 times, oh, that's the number for the natural gas. This is basically right in the BC Building Code, an explanation that based on this study, natural gas has 17 times more emissions than electricity. So that's why under the Zero Carbon Step Code, you get so much more benefit from choosing electricity or choosing heat pump technology run on electricity. So moving into the performance pathway, I just want to go over some terminology for some of the symbols that I'm going to be using here. So I'm going to be talking about space heating equipment, which is the little thermostat, right? You're setting the thermostat on your space heating system. For water heating, that's your shower head, right? Hot water. And cooking is the pot. So those are the three symbols for space heating, water heating, and cooking. And then the colors also indicate the fuel type. So fossil fuel equipment is the orange color. Imagine fire, it's burning. And the zero emissions equipment is the electricity, which is the cool blue, let's call it. So under the prescriptive path, we have under emissions level 2 moderate carbon. You can see from the symbols there under the prescriptive path, you only have to decarbonize your space heating system. Under the prescriptive code, that means both primary and supplementary. So if you are doing a, let's say an electric air source heat pump with no natural gas backup, you would be compliant with emission level 2 under the prescriptive pathway. This means that you could still have natural gas cooking and natural gas for your domestic hot water. For emissions level 3, you need to decarbonize both your space heating and your domestic hot water. However, you could still have your cooking and your appliances to be natural gas. And finally, under the prescriptive pathway, for emissions level 4 for zero carbon performance, there's no fossil fuels allowed at all. So this also means decarbonizing your appliances. So to be clear, a zero carbon home under the performance pathway has no natural gas. So this could be great, you know, if you're building in an area that only has access to electricity, you would be and you're building a fully electric home. Great, you're already compliant with emission level 4 under the prescriptive pathway. No additional calculations are needed. This was what makes it the prescriptive path simple and clear for builders. You know, basically you're just selecting what to decarbonize, what equipment to decarbonize, not necessarily the numbers. So that's the prescriptive pathway. And you can see it's, you know, decarb your heating system for moderate, decarb your heating and hot water for strong, and decarb all systems for zero. It's pretty straightforward. The performance pathways tier is a little bit more complicated. So we basically have kind of two metrics that we need to understand here. So the first metric, the total GHG, as I refer to it, this is the quantity of carbon pollution per home per year. And you can see here the different numbers for the different tiers in kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per year. The second metric that we need to be aware of is the carbon intensity. This is often referred to as the GHGI, the greenhouse gas intensity of a home per year. So it's taking the total GHG emissions and dividing it by how many meter square of floor area we have. So it's an intensity per square meter of floor area. The option 1 that uses the total GHG and has its own, these metrics here, these are ideal for smaller homes, whereas the second option under the performance pathway is better for large homes. They have these GHG metrics and on top of it, a maximum total GHG per home per year. And under the option 2, you need to meet both. Okay, so let's talk about the metrics for the option 1 performance path. So again, these are the ones that are good for small homes. So small homes at this tier must meet a maximum of 1,050 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per year. Under emission level 3, you need to basically cut that a little bit more than in half, down to 440 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per year. And at 0, typo there, sorry, 265 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions per year. So builders choosing this approach are basically focusing on decarbonizing heating or hot water, depending on what step code level they're at and what the resulting performance are. In this option for builders building custom homes, you can at any level still use natural gas cooking and other minor auxiliary uses like fireplaces at this point. If you're a visual learner, you know, we have a graph here where you can see there is probably the biggest jump is from emission level 2 to emission level 3 from moderate to strong carbon. So again, this is the first option, the total quantity of greenhouse gas emissions. I've referred to that as total carbon here. This is better for small homes. Under option 2 of the performance pathway, this is where you have the two metrics. You have the greenhouse gas intensity and a maximum total GHG. So for moderate, the GHGI is 6 with 2,400 total GHGs. So it's higher than performance option 1 because it's going to be used for larger homes, right? Larger homes have more heated volume. They're generally going to use more energy and therefore more emissions. Under emission level 3, that number is cut down to 800 kilograms of total GHGs and 2.5 GHGI. And under the zero carbon emission level 4, we're down to 1.5 GHGI and 500 kilograms of total carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. Same as before, under any levels, you can still use natural gas cooking and other minor auxiliary end uses. So, great for this path is great for custom homes, your average to large homes. And here's just another visual representation of the GHGI and the maximum GHG per step. So to be clear, the second performance pathway, you must meet both of these numbers in order to be compliant. And let's just go over again very quickly what energy is included in these calculations, because how much energy you use, what type of fuel, times the emission factor is how we get our zero carbon, we get our emissions results. So to be clear, what is included, your principal heating system, whether that's carrying 100% of the heating load or maybe down to 70% of the heating load, that's all included. Your supplementary heating, that's maybe like if your principal system, for example, is carrying 70% of your total heating load, your supplementary is carrying the other 30%. Both of those are included in our calculations. So whether it's natural gas or electric being supplementary, that is included. All of our energy for our domestic hot water, ventilation, and cooling. I suppose if you didn't have cooling in your building, well, at this point, we do have cooling, at least in one room moving forward, right? So this is all of our energy use, including fans, including pumps, everything associated with these 5 major uses. This is what is included. What is not included in our calculation is any kind of outdoor natural gas use. So if you have a decorative fireplace, maybe outdoor plumbed heaters, an outdoor plumbed barbecue line, maybe a pool or a hot tub that's heated with gas or electricity, that is not included in our calculations. Appliances or other auxiliary end uses such as gas cooktop stoves, clothes dryers, ovens, not included. And finally, again, that definition that I talked about earlier, redundant or backup heating sources. These could be wood stoves, decorative fireplaces, or backup generators. I've put an asterisk on the decorative fireplaces just to let you know that currently this is not included in our calculations, but as I understand it, future versions of the zero carbon step code will take this into account. So currently it's not, in future it will be. Okay, now we're getting into the meat of our presentation, the different case studies that I've put forward for you. And I do want to be clear, these are case studies based on archetypes that I have selected. You can't take these results and just apply them, across the board for every building that could possibly be built. Depending on the size of the home, the complexity, the amount of articulation, the amount of glazing, the results will vary, right? It's a performance-based energy code. It's a performance-based zero carbon step code. So this is meant to be informative, but also please do take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because it's not going to be the same if you're applying it to, a very large or, overly articulated building. The archetypes I have selected, I have a single family home, a small home / maybe getting close to a laneway home, and some row homes, both side by side and back to back stacked. I will say the geometry for all were quite straightforward for this case study, just to put that out there. And it's all in this climate zone here locally, okay? So let's first talk about the single family home with the secondary suite. I've done this all in Township of Langley, right, which is right now, as of April 1st of this year, step 4 and emission level 2. So we have a truss roof that I've upgraded to R50, walls I've upgraded to R24, foundation I've added an inch of XPS R5 between the studs and the concrete, slab I've upgraded to R15. Windows USI 1.4, so this is, still a double pane, either a really bad triple pane or a really good double pane window. I've added an HRV at 70% SRE for the main house, but I've left the suite as a continuously operating bath fan, no heat recovery there. For the primary heating system, I've done an electric air source heat pump with a supplementary gas furnace. And in the suite, to keep it simple, I just said that the suite was electric baseboard. So keep in mind, this is step 4. We have MUI metrics that we have to hit. That's why I had to go with the heat pump. The heat pump provides cooling. Check. I now meet the, the mandatory cooling requirement. And my domestic hot water system, I just went with a natural gas instantaneous. And for step 4, air tightness 1.5. So all of this together, I have been able to meet emissions level 2. So I've met emissions level 2 with gas with my domestic hot water and also my gas furnace backup. And I actually should also add here that my cutoff temperature for almost all of my case studies I've set as 0 degrees Celsius. So assuming that after 0 degrees Celsius, the natural gas furnace is coming on and providing the heating. So I think this is pretty good news. Emission level 2, we are compliant with for, an average home that's being built in the Township of Langley. What if I wanted to go to emission level 3? Well, I had to change some natural gas use. So I decided to change to an electric hot water tank. That got me to emission level 3, and I was able to keep my natural gas furnace supplemental system for emission level 3. So again, I think this is, good news for builders, good news for homeowners. What happens if I remove the secondary suite? So you can see my numbers. I'm just going to toggle back and forth a little bit here. So I'm still going for emission level 3, but I've removed the secondary suite. And yes, I can see my emissions have gone up, but my emissions have gone up because I actually changed the iteration here. This one had an electric hot water tank for the domestic hot water. This one, I was able to change back to a natural gas instantaneous. However, because I added that back in, my supplementary, I just went to electric resistance heat backup, or supplementary, I guess I should say. So in this example, I had the furnace backing up my supplementary. In this example, I said, okay, no furnace. I'm going 100% electric supplementary. So you can see I am compliant with emission level 3 without a secondary suite. How was I able to do that, right? In this example, I had to switch to an electric hot water tank. Without the secondary suite, I was able to keep the natural gas instantaneous. And I would say there's some trade-offs. 1, I got rid of my natural gas supplementary furnace. And 2, I think it's important to understand that the occupant load is different. So the conclusion I came to in this case study, why did the single family home without the secondary suite have an easier time complying with emission level 3? Meaning, why was I able to keep my natural gas domestic hot water at emission level 3, whereas I couldn't do that with the secondary suite? And the conclusion that I've come to is that the BC Building Code defines a home with a secondary suite as one house. This means that whether you have a house with or without a secondary suite, your emissions level targets are the same. However, with a house with a secondary suite, you have a higher occupancy load. So you have people living in that suite. So therefore, the house with the secondary suite with a higher occupancy load increases the demand for hot water. So that's affecting not only my MUI, but it's also affecting my hot water consumption, which is affecting the MUI and the zero carbon step code calculations. So this is why the house without the secondary suite was able to comply with emissions level 3 with a natural gas domestic hot water. Whereas with the house with the secondary suite, I couldn't get it to work. So I think the important learning outcome here is if you're building a home with a secondary suite, you're likely going to have a harder time complying with your MUI and complying with your zero carbon because there's a higher hot water load. And the other learning outcome that's very important here is that for the calculations, when you're building a home with a secondary suite, the emission targets are the same. The total GHG is the same. So to be clear, you're not increasing your emission level for a house with a secondary suite. It's the same because the code looks as a house with a secondary suite as one house. There's no, even though there's more occupants, the total GHG does not increase. Okay, let's go to the small single family home, you know, an infill home. This example was, you know, you maybe kind of a larger laneway house. So this one here, it had kind of a shed roof, which was a cathedral. I upgraded to R31 because, again, remember, we're step 4. The walls, I went to R24, foundation slab, R15. This one, compared to my last, like so far the specs are looking quite similar. However, for my windows, I had to go up to triple pane. I had to go to the USI 1.22. And remember, we've talked about this from an energy point of view. Smaller homes typically have a harder time complying. For my mechanical, I did add an HRV. And I went all electric baseboard because this is a small home. It doesn't have a large heating load. Does it make sense to put a forced air system in this little home? No, it doesn't. So I did 100% electric baseboard with the exception of the living room. I added a mini split, not only for energy efficiency, but also for the cooling requirement, right? At least one room in the home has to have cooling. And domestic hot water, I was able to keep as natural gas instantaneous with an ACH of 1.5 for step 4. So this little home was compliant with emission level 2 with the use of a natural gas instantaneous water heater. What about emission level 3? Well, the only thing I could really change at this point was the domestic hot water. So I changed that to just a typical electric hot water tank. And boom, we jumped all the way to emission level 4. So the conclusion, you know, why did this small single family home jump all the way to emission level 4? What happened to emission level 3? Since the space heating load for this home was so small, approximately 15,000 BTUs, did it make sense to have a forced air either heat pump or a forced air furnace? No, it did not. It's such a small heating load, it made a lot more sense, and even space-wise, to just go electric, primarily electric baseboard for this example. So since the space heating was already 100% fully electric for this small home, changing the domestic hot water system from natural gas tankless to an electric tank just jumped us up to emission level 4. You know, we just kind of skipped over emission level 3. So one of my learning outcomes is, you know, for smaller homes, it is almost harder to hit emission level 3 because you need to have, I guess, some form of natural gas use still. But ultimately, for some homes, electric baseboard makes sense. So electric baseboard plus electric hot water tank, I mean, we're going to be jumping to emission level 4 anyways. So next up, I have a row home building. So 4 units side by side, meaning, you know, there's no interlocking, they're just straight row homes. So this was a mechanical solution that I wanted to bring to you for emission level 2. So flat roof in this construction was R31. The walls I was able to keep to R22, pretty typical. The foundation slab I was able to keep to R12, pretty typical. The windows, double pane, USI 1.4. I did add in an HRV. I did add in an air source heat pump again for our MUI compliance, and I was able to keep a supplementary gas furnace for this example. And I was able to keep our natural gas instantaneous. And because this is 4 units, our metrics for units for houses, let's say, our total GHG emissions are all ×4. So my max GHG for option 2 is 420 kilograms. So you can see I'm well under this and easily complying with emission level 2 for this example. I did want to see if I was able to do an envelope solution for you. Basically, I wanted to see if there was a way to maybe, it's a small townhome, keep it to 100% electric baseboard, similar to what I did for the laneway house. However, with only putting in a heat pump for the heating and cooling in the primary bedroom, again, to meet that cooling requirement, the rest of it was all electric baseboard, I found it was quite difficult to comply with both the step, well, actually more or less it was the MUI that I had a hard time complying with. And you can see I had to do pretty extensive envelope upgrades in order to get this compliant with both step 4 MUI and emission level 2. Like I had to take the roof to R40, 2 inches of exterior insulation, bumped up the slab to R20, you know, top of the line, triple pane windows, USI 1.0, and HRV 75%. I still was able to keep the natural gas instantaneous water heater, but you know, it was obviously not super cost effective from an envelope point of view to get it there. But I think it was important to show it is possible. If you do an envelope first approach, you do not have to always depend on an electric air source heat pump to help meet your MUI targets. You can envelope the upgrade and go with primarily electric baseboard for your primary heating system in this example, and this was compliant with emission level 2. What about emission level 3 for the same building? So I kind of went back to my first iteration, which was the heat pump, the full heat pump. And I played around with this one a little bit, and I did want to bring to you an example with a cold climate air source heat pump. So that means there was really no supplementary heating system needed. That cold climate air source heat pump with super high efficiency, it's going to operate, you know, 90% down to 17 degrees Celsius, which is fine for this climate zone here. And this building, with the addition of the cold climate heat pump, I was able to meet both step 4 and emission level 4. But I did have to switch the domestic hot water to electric. So again, kind of similar thing. In this example, like kind of jumping over emission level 3 and going all the way to 4. And it's just because at this point, when you're fully electric for your space and domestic hot water heating, you're going to be meeting emission level 4 under the performance pathway. The next example I have is, we're seeing a lot more of these days. This was a back-to-back stacked 4-plex. So it's interlocking, maybe an adaptable unit on the bottom with 2 adaptable units on the bottom with 2 up above. And you can see here the specs are kind of similar to what we had before for emission level 2, nothing quite, you know, all pretty normal, right? R22 in the walls, R12 under the slab, USI 1.4 double pane window. However, in this example, I was able to keep my I was able to put my heating system fully natural gas and fully natural gas on my instantaneous domestic hot water. So you can see my intensity is too high, but I was able to comply using option 1, because again, these are, you know, smaller units, right? They're more dense. We're fitting in more units in a smaller amount of space. So this was compliant with the total GHG. Again, it's, you know, that 1050 times 4 units. That's a maximum of 4,200 total GHG emissions. And you can see we're well under that. And this was compliant with emission level 2 with both a natural gas furnace and natural gas instantaneous. We didn't meet option 2. The GHGI intensity was too high, but I was compliant using option 1. For emission level 3, basically I went, okay, let's get rid of the furnace. Let's just say, let's go to electric baseboard. Let's say there is AC so that we're meeting our cooling load. But again, smaller units, electric baseboard just made more sense. And I actually was able to comply with emission level 3 with my natural gas instantaneous. So why is that? Why did the stacked townhomes with the exact same floor area, by the way, you can see here, they're both 4 units with a total of 5,400 square feet. It's just configured slightly differently. Why did the stacked townhomes have an easier time complying? Meaning, why was I able to use more natural gas in the stacked townhomes than in the row homes? And ultimately, the conclusion I've come to is that side-by-side row homes under EnerGuide have a higher occupant load than the smaller stacked townhomes. Basically, row homes are assumed to have, you know, 2 adults and 1 child, 3 people in the home, whereas EnerGuide assumes that these more dense, smaller stacked MURBs or stacked townhomes have on average 2 people living in them. So, you know, going from 3 people to 2 people, the stacked townhomes have a third less domestic hot water load, and that's significant when we're calculating both our MUI and our emission levels, right? If you're using less hot water, using a third less hot water, you're going to be better on your MUI and you're going to be better on your emissions. So this is why if you are building multifamily, you're probably going to have an easier time complying with stacked townhomes than you would with row homes, because the occupant load is just different. And then I wanted to also think back, you know, why did the stacked townhomes have an easier time complying than the single family homes? If you remember, the single family homes had a lot more envelope upgrades. The stacked townhomes had less envelope upgrades. It's really ultimately the same reason. Single family homes under EnerGuide have a higher occupant load than the smaller stacked townhomes. It's the exact same as the row homes. We're going from at least 3 or 4 people in a single family home, 4 being with a 5 being with a suite. So ultimately, if we're being compared to a stacked townhome that's assumed to have only 2 people as compared to 3 or 5, you're gonna have an easier time complying because the domestic hot water load is less. And then finally, I wanted to put in here, what additional paperwork is required for zero carbon step code? This is a question I get quite often from builders. And I want to say, hey, good news. There's no additional reporting required from you, the builder. Your energy advisor uses the exact same BC Energy pre-construction and as-built reports. And they basically it's already built in there that in addition to reporting your step code level, it now also reports your emissions level. So, you know, yes, there's maybe a bit more communication that needs to happen between you and your energy advisor about what type of systems you're using, how you're building the home, but good news, there's no additional paperwork required. So some of the key takeaways that I would like you to remember from today, you know, step code cares about how much energy you're using, whereas the zero carbon step code cares about what type of fuel you're using. The zero carbon step code was designed by the province to provide builders with options. You know, whether it's a smaller building, a larger building, or if prescriptive just makes sense for you, you have options. Whether you want to be able to keep natural gas cooking and appliances, great, you have the performance pathway. It's meant to be flexible. And I really want to highlight again, there's a lot of synergies between the Step 4 MUI compliance, the zero carbon, and the new cooling requirement, right? If you're going with a heat pump anyways to help with your Step 4 MUI, you know what, you're going to be meeting your carbon and you're also meeting the cooling. So that's going to make this simple for you builders. You know, talk to your EA and talk to your mechanical suppliers early on to learn about what your options are. You know, if you've take something away from here about, well, what is my supplementary? What should my supplementary be? What is the cutoff temperature? Great. Start those conversations early so that when you're going to apply for your building permit, you already have answers and decisions made. And finally, as I just stated, no additional paperwork requirements. Your energy advisor is going to take care of that with the forms that they already submit to the municipality. And if I was to maybe leave you with one message, you've already had to learn and do the most of the work with the energy step code. The zero carbon by comparison is not overly complicated. Compliance can be simple based on what you already are having to do with the BC Energy step code. So now we have a few more minutes for questions, about 10 minutes or so. How do you want to do that, Kevin? Do people want to unmute themselves, or are there some items in the chat?
Emma, thanks so much for delivering this awesome lecture today. And yeah, you know what, to answer that exact question, I think Jean can a little bit more technologically equipped with Teams. Jean, how can we do that?
So yeah, I think we have been answering most of the questions in the chat. So we could just like ask the question to Emma, like, you know, somebody can read out the question to Emma and like she can answer it.
Okay, do we have a hands up thing where they can speak or?
Yeah, well, if people want to put up their hand and ask a question,
sure, that's also possible. Like, I mean, like, yeah, people who raise their hands, like if they have this raise hands option, and like if they raise their hands, we can like unmute them. Okay, so we've got like a few already. Edson, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Yes. First of all, thanks for this seminar. It's very helpful for me. I work at the University Endowment Lands here, and we're a very small team, and I feel like we are so behind with stuff here, like compared to other jurisdictions. And my question is, right now we are at EL2 for the carbon step code. And I want to find like if you can quickly go over the difference between supplementary and backup and what it means for reaching the target, because I don't understand if we're trying to implement it, why would you need a backup system that uses gas anyway? And I'm actually dealing with a project right now that is trying to use the backup gas system for the boiler and all that. And because the houses that we're building here in the UL, they're so big, and I feel like maybe in terms of if you're using gas for hot water, I'm thinking it would be a higher hot water load for. So if you can please go over that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I understand that the terminology can be confusing between backup and supplementary, and how the BC Building Code defines backup is it's not part of your heating load. It's separate. Like a backup system would be a generator or a natural gas fireplace or a wood burning stove. Your supplementary system, which is what I think you're referring to as, it's supplemental to the primary heating system. So I don't know exactly what type of system is being proposed there, but maybe it's an air to water heat pump as the primary with a boiler as the supplemental. So that's kind of this, it's supplemental to the primary. So it's important to understand that. And under emissions level 2, I mean, there is supposed to be, flexibility still. It is possible that if the energy advisor is able to show compliance with emission level 2 with, let's say an air to water heat pump with a supplemental boiler, maybe that boiler is also comboing the domestic hot water. If the energy advisor is able to show compliance with emission level 2 under the BC Building Code, that should be fine. The asterisk that I think is important to take away from this is what is the cutoff temperature? And maybe that would be a perfect question to be taking to your builder or taking to your energy advisor. What is that design temperature where, we're switching from primary system to supplementary system? Because that makes a very, very big difference in the performance. If, maybe the energy modeling is to -5, but the installer, the HVAC controller installer is going to set it to 5. Now your project might be kind of in a dangerous position, going from compliance to non-compliance. So that would be my recommendation in that scenario is, asking what the cutoff temperature is, making sure all the information is included in the pre-construction report. And finally, if you're maybe unsure if the supplementary system is needed, look for that CSA F280 calculation. And that is what should be able to show, if the primary system based on the heating load calcs is designed to meet the full heating load of the home, then to your point, why do we need a supplementary system? But ultimately, your design heat load calculations can basically prove if one system is enough to carry the load. And, in our climate zone, it is very mild. There could be situations where we don't even need a supplementary system. So why are we installing it? From a builder's point of view, get that heat load calc done. If your heat pump can carry it and, you confirm with your installer that it can operate to low temperatures, why are we paying to install a supplementary gas furnace? Does it even make sense? These are the questions you need to be asking.
Yeah, it's thank you. He's saying it's an air-to-air heat pump system for the
air
primary.
to air. Okay, so forced air.
So it's
forced air with
okay.
maybe a gas furnace backup?
No.
Or is it gas boiler with radiant bore? Because that's a little bit of a loophole.
Yeah, gas boiler.
In that
gas boiler.
situation, I would actually recommend that the energy advisor models the boiler with radiant and floor as the primary. If you're installing a heat pump with a boiler with radiant floor, that's 2 heating systems, which could be possibly circumvented. I would tell the energy advisor that they need to be modeling the most carbon intensive as the primary heating system. City of Vancouver has wording to that effect. West Vancouver has some very good wording to that effect. You know, we don't want loopholes where the heat pump could be turned off and the boiler with radiant and floor could be running the show. We don't want that. So might sound like that's a situation you might have.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for your questions, Edison. If you do have further, you can put in the chat, and we can get to that maybe in a follow-up email. But we'll take other questions as we wrap up the day. Thanks.
I'll put my email up here if you want to email me directly as well.
Emma, I have one question. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative. I have one question regarding where we have a supplement heating system. Then you mentioned that the EA would need to provide the balance point temperature on the pre-construction report. And you wanted that information to be somehow transferred to the HVAC contractor when they're actually setting up a thermostat, when actually finalizing the house. Do you think this is somehow would need to be inspected or by the building official or somehow needs to be monitored? How do we are going to enforce it?
I think that is a really great question, but we're getting to that point where we need to be more detailed. And I'll actually give you a little bit of a tip. E3 is moving away from using balance point because the balance point, if you do the calculation, it's actually not 0 degrees Celsius. It's in some climate zones, it's -5. I think in even some other climate zones, we saw it as low as -7. So we're switching to going to restricted in our energy modeling and setting it to 0 degrees Celsius and communicating that in our pre-construction report. So maybe I can turn it over to the township to say, how is that going to be enforced? But from my point of view, when I do go to a project, you can at the controls verify yourself as the energy advisor in your final home inspection what it's been set to. So I wouldn't say there's any wording anywhere that says we have to do that, but from my point of view and from the standard that like I hold myself to, I would check that moving forward. But from a township point of view, that is hard to verify at occupancy. Do we have any ideas?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Ali. And that's perfect. This is one of the many reasons we have a Builder Forum series opportunity to ask these kind of questions. So there's not a lot of language in code for us to go with. However, per BCBC, we can require the submission of a CSA F280 calculation. So that's the first way we know that a system has been designed properly. And that's a key component there. Further to our BP application on the checklist, if it does note the balance point or some kind of a lockout, we can look at that to make sure that the sizing and any other parameters for its operation are in line with the CSA F280 form. And good question, and I think other building officials or folks on the call or municipal folk on the call are thinking about this as well. So I think over time we will be issuing, I think, more information on how to successfully communicate your plans to us and how we can ensure that it makes sense. Now, for example, if you had a lockout at, say, let's just say 15 degrees or 10 degrees or something, that would probably not make sense to us, just as a litmus test. I hope that gives a little bit of an answer to that question.
We have Moreno Sergio. You can unmute yourself and please ask your question. Moreno.
Maybe while we wait for Sergio, I acknowledge we are at 11:02.
Yeah.
And it looks like we still have a lot of people on the call here. For those of you that do have to leave, maybe I'll say bye, and maybe if Emma can stick around for maybe a few more minutes to answer a few more questions, if that's okay. Thanks, Emma. So for those of you that have to go, thank you so much for attending another Builder Forum series, and thank you so much to Emma for delivering an awesome, incredibly informative workshop. And thank you to Amy for all of her help over the last 8 months, and of course, Amy and Jean for putting on this event. It is a ton of resources, a ton of time, so thanks to them for that as well. So I'll let you go, and for those who want to stick around to ask a few more questions, we can stick around maybe 5-10 more minutes. Sergio, if you are able to comment or ask your question, you can go ahead now. Otherwise, for other folks, go ahead and put your hand up, and we can take a question.
Question in the chat. So what? I'm sorry, where did I go? Okay. Okay, I'm all forward to the step code. How can we compare whether the electrical bill cost will be beneficial to the end user compared to natural gas?
So I guess it depends on the situation. If it's full electric baseboard, that's probably going to be the most expensive to the homeowner. But if you are running on a heat pump, I actually had something prepared. I should have put it just straight into my presentation, but honestly, I think I can get this up quite quickly here. In BC, specifically where we are, it shouldn't actually be too cost prohibitive to change from a gas furnace to a gas heat pump. Can you see what I just put up on the screen here?
Yep.
Perfect. So here in BC, let's say hypothetically, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's say that the cost of natural gas is 3 times cheaper than the cost of electricity. Well, if you're installing an electric air source heat pump that is 3 times as efficient as a furnace, right? Our best furnaces that I've seen are about 98% efficient, whereas a heat pump could be, you know, have a COP of about 3, meaning for every 1 joule of energy you put in, you're getting 3 joules back. That's 300% efficient. You know, you're using 1/3 of the energy. So this was put out by the Pembina Institute, and you can see that the annual heating bill of the exact same home run fully on gas, maybe it's 375 annual heating bill versus an electric heat pump. You're in that range, depending on the efficiency of the unit that you've installed, depending on maybe how cold the winter is, you know, you're going to be anywhere from 300 to 400, right? So like I would say that cost wise, it's very comparable. And I've heard both Hydro and BC Hydro and Fortis BC come out and say it's pretty much a wash when it comes to the cost. However, your carbon pollution is so much more significant with the furnace than with the natural gas. So if any of you are worried about the cost of running a heat pump, arguably, and we have evidence to prove, it shouldn't be that much more expensive. In fact, it should be comparable. Obviously, if you're switching to fully electric, like electric resistant, electric baseboard that's 100% efficient, yeah, that's when you're going to be paying 3 times more. But a heat pump shouldn't be that way, especially if the cutoff temperature is, you know, set at a reasonable rate, especially if it's right sized and is operating properly. That's why I brought in all those things, is it all works together.
I could add to that. So this chart here notes it's for a typical upgraded home. And this is probably in a retrofit case. BC Energy Step Code is either through code or through municipality adoption will be eventually requiring Step 5. Step 5 reduces energy demand by 80%, regardless of your fuel type. So so these numbers here are kind of the, maybe even in the past. Yeah. Your average heating bill in any case of a Step 5 home will be remarkably less. And when you do add in mechanical equipment that can reach 200 to 300% efficient, they will continue to drop. So that's an important consideration. And that's one of the many reasons why the Township of Langley is requiring Step 4 while we pair with the zero carbon step code at EL2 and the next year EL3.
Thank you. It's very true.
Right. Yeah, so here's a question. I think we had a few questions related to the same topic in the Q&A. So this is like what will happen. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if we have the answer for this one, but like either Kevin or Emma, you both can answer this. What will happen when everyone goes fully electric? Is there a large enough capacity supply of electricity, including all of the electric cars? Are we ready to be fully electric?
To answer the question today, no, we're not. And the utility is very aware of that. I've talked to Hydro and I've talked to Fortis BC, and I think both of them have something in plans. What was the number? Like $35 billion each of infrastructure upgrades that are needed for the electrical grid and for Hydro and for the Fortis grid. And the Fortis grid is planning on moving to renewable natural gas. That's going to be happening. And, you know, the renewable natural gas was not yet an option on the emissions factor list, but that's what they're working towards. And once we have a set emissions factor for renewable natural gas, that could be an alternative compliance pathway. You know, the reality is we can't just fully depend on one utility. We're going to need Fortis moving forward, which is why they're moving towards renewable natural gas, which is basically collecting methane from different locations and harvesting it, that which would just be going up into the atmosphere from, say, like a waste facility, for example. So we are aware of that. They are moving towards that. It's just going to take time. But today, no, there is not enough capacity, but we are all aware, and plans are happening to upgrade both our hydro grid and our Fortis renewable natural gas. A good question. Always a good question.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So there's one question. How about the capital cost for both heating systems? I think that's related to the graphics that you put before.
I guess like the upfront cost of a furnace versus a heat pump versus a cold climate heat pump. Talk to your mechanical supplier. I just, as an energy advisor, I don't have that information, but the point of this presentation is to kind of arm you with knowledge, arm you with options. And now you can go and you can ask, what about this configuration? What about that? Work with an energy advisor, get some, you know, modeling done for your specific building early so that you have time to go to your supplier and cost out the options.
I'll also add to that, and what Emma highlights, that's the exact prescription you want to take. However, as noted in the beginning of today's workshop, 933.3.2 highlights mandatory cooling. We use that word colloquially. It's not called that, but cooling is required by some shape or form. And if you are required to have mechanical cooling for that building, a heat pump happens to prescriptively meet EL2 of the Zero Carbon Step Code and your mandatory cooling requirement. You tick off 2 boxes with one mechanical system.
And your MUI.
And your MUI, and your MUI. So multiple boxes. Thank you for that, Emma. Alternatively, if you are able to be compliant in some city or municipality with a gas furnace, you will still need potentially to have a mechanical cooling potentially in that building. So, and of course, your MUI is then going to be taking a hit with a less efficient mechanical system. So there's a lot of pieces here. Again, talk to your energy advisors, people just like Emma, to get the picture. Please, I would strongly advise, if there's anything you get from any of these lectures, avoid designing a building to 80% and then calling an energy advisor. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Please call one from the outset for dramatically improved outcomes. I think we're at 10, 11, 12. Maybe Ajeen will take one more question, and
yes,
I think we can say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, we have like Santosh Wani raise their hand. Santosh, you can unmute and ask your question.
Oh, hi there. This is very good information. My question is basically for energy efficient and alternate for electrical, going for 100% electrical. Do we have any more information on solar power, alternate for, natural gas, something like that, to become more efficient? Yeah.
So that's a really good question. The BC Energy Step Code is not designed to include solar generation, say, from PV panels. Basically, the province didn't want to allow kind of like a bit of a loophole that, I can build a worse envelope by offsetting with this mechanical solution. So as of right now, the BC Energy Step Code and the Zero Carbon Step Code does not include any benefit from solar renewables. Very good question.
Thank you.
That's all the questions that we have.
Okay. Thanks everybody for attending today. And thanks for sticking around a little bit extra, and thanks for your questions. So I think with that, we'll thank Emma for her workshop and delivering all these awesome questions, or a lecture and answering all these really great questions. Thanks, Amy and Jean. Remember, folks, for those of you who are still here, please do the survey. This is how we know if we're meeting the mark, and if we should continue doing these. So please fill out that survey. And if there's any questions that we did happen to miss in the chat, we will be sending them a follow-up email. I'm pretty sure we got to basically or nearly everything, but if we did miss something or fell through the cracks, we will send an email. Remember, please join our newsletter if you're not already on it. Otherwise, you will not be in the loop for our next or upcoming events. And I just want to highlight there are a few events coming up at the township and beyond. Look forward to well, for realtors, we're doing an event on high performance homes to help equip realtors to understand how to sell the homes that you're building. Also, there is from the Home Performance Stakeholder Council, a contractor forum on May 2nd. Please look out for that. As well, we're going to be holding another event, a 201 version of this course, or a more advanced version of this course, in about 2 months from now. Also, look out for our newsletter. There is going to be a lecture from E3 Eco Group, again, on zero carbon step code, going into the more nitty-gritties of compliance. And as well, those who operate in and around the city of Abbotsford, there are 5 workshops, or live workshop, as far as I understand it, coming to folks like yourself. So wait for our newsletters or check out our newsletters, and we'll have more information there. With that all being said, Ajin, do you have something?
Yeah, I have posted the link to City of Abbotsford upcoming event on the chat, like you said, and you can sign up there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ajin. Okay, with that, thanks everybody again, and keep an eye out in your inbox for new and upcoming events. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.